Thank you, Mr. President. My position on these things is well known and not a surprise. And I am not going to vote for this evening. And in fact, if there was a vote that I could cast that would be hell no, that would be what it would be. I do have a number of questions, and I want to make a couple of statements first. First to Mayor Burnaby, we have occasionally ribbed each other friendly about there are times when the perceived interests of the city and the interests of the school district are in conflict. And I think that we could agree that to the extent that you all think that this is a benefit to the city, that this is certainly one of those times. Secondly, I'd like to thank you for coming here. I appreciate when people who want to get into the revenue stream of the school district come and talk to the school board. Because sometimes people do and sometimes people don't. And there are a number of times when City Council has just imposed these things on us with just a letter saying, hey, we're going to do it. So I appreciate you coming down here, and I think that's the standard that this community ought to expect from everybody. But since I've been back on the board, we've only had it twice. And Mayor, I hope that you and Mr. Smuggler can come back at another time and brief this board on the economic impact of the community reinvestment area that was passed 2 weeks ago at council, because that impacts this school district too. And once again, I think we should be briefed on that. So, Mr. Crawford, Hall of Fame Village already has a 30-year tax increment financing package, and that affects both this school district and Plain local school district. I was not on the board when that was passed. Had I would have voted no on that as well. I've seen some figures in the area of like $9 million that TIF package is worth. Do you know exactly how much that is worth?
I don't, and the only reason I don't is it's based on the amount of construction and infrastructure that you'd be creating. And we're not quite to the level where I have those exact figures as I showed you. We're expecting those by September. But I'm happy to, as we know more definitively what those are, happy to come and have that discussion.
You monetized that TIF though, didn't you?
For phase one, yes.
Okay, so how much was it?
I'd have to get the exact figure right.
Is $9 million reasonable?
I would say it's probably roughly around that number. Yeah, but I don't want to mislead. I'm happy to get that specific. So
Hall of Fame Village has a tax incentive package in the form of tax increment financing that interrupts a share of about $9 million over 30 years to this school district. Okay, so as I look at this, the building that we're talking about, the McKinley Grand Hotel, is currently worth about $4.5 million. That's what the auditor says it's worth. And it's generating about $117,000 worth of property taxes a year. So as I do math, figuring that if you're going to put $22 million into that building, it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that it might be tax appraised, say, at double that, $9 million. Okay, so assuming that there was no change in millage and no change in valuation, just double what it is now, the 75% that you would not be paying that would ordinarily come to the school district over 15 years comes to about $1.3 million. But then I look at your figures, and you are expecting your return to be that this is 2.7% of your rate of return. So you're actually figuring that this tax abatement is worth a heck of a lot more than I think it's worth. So how much do you think it's worth?
Well, as I said, the value of it equates to about 2.7% of the return profile that we need, right? So today we're generating $10 million of NOI roughly from the investment that we made. So, a couple more $1 million, basically.
So it's worth about double what I think it's worth, or what I thought it's worth. So it's worth a couple $1 million over 15 years. So $2 million. So that comes out to about, wait, that's not, I know, here, 2. Yeah, I was right. That comes out to about $133,000 a year that would, were it not for this tax abatement, come to the school district that instead is going to be reinvested in that hotel. That's $133,000 a year. So, the strongest argument to do this, the most compelling case, is that if it's not done, the hotel goes away, we lose the $117,000. And, okay, I get that. But that really begs 3 additional questions. And the first is philosophical. Why is it the burden of the Kansas City School District to ensure the economic viability of that business?
Well, I'm sorry.
No, if you have an answer.
Yeah, no, look, I think in my experience, and that's all I can answer with, first of all, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your point of view and certainly respect how you I would say this, that 100, you said it right, 100% of that existing tax revenue, 25% of new tax revenue that will be generated off of a much more compelling asset, driving a lot more revenue, is better than an asset closing. And in my experience, this asset is headed in that direction. We have worked with the owner. The owner has, I think, had offers that could close over the past. I won't say we're the last chance, but I certainly will say that I'm not sure there are other buyers out there that would look at the economics of this hotel and make a purchase. So we think that the investment being made is not an investment being lost. It's being made in maintaining and actually increasing the potential taxes that the school district will get.
Well, like I said, that is the most compelling argument. But it also begs the question about the weakness and the vulnerability of your business plan. I mean, if this thing can't go, without $133,000 a year, it would ordinarily come to the school district. I mean, is this worth investing in at all?
Well, look, I think there are 3 things you can take comfort in. First is we do have all of the youth programming coming to our village property today. And we work with them to place them in hotels that aren't operated by the village. And so we work very closely with partner hotels all through the community and outside of the community. We will do the same thing for this hotel. So there's a built-in business model with youth programming that we feel good about. The second piece is what I articulated earlier, which is going to the community. We've been told, and I've personally been told by several business leaders, you get that hotel back in shape, something that is not, something that is livable and something that is compelling. From a product point of view, we will bring our business back there. And we know, looking for our diligence process, there have been events, big corporate groups, and other things that just over the last several years have said the hotel is just not up to our standards, we're not going to stay there. But the proximity of the hotel is fantastic to a lot of other businesses in downtown. Now, I'll make you didn't ask this question, but I'll make an additional statement, and again, I'm going to say it's my opinion. I've seen small downtowns before. I came from a smaller one that existed in Canton, Ohio. If the assets aren't properly maintained in a downtown, downtowns can die. So if this asset, this hotel, which I think is incredibly important to the vibrancy and the fabric of how downtown is made up, goes away, there's an office building right next door. I venture to say, again, in my opinion, they're going to be incredibly challenged to maintain the level of occupancy from an office tenant. If that building doesn't do well, there's a parking building right across the street. If there's nobody in the offices, there's nobody in the hotel, there's nobody parking, it just can create a domino effect. And I've seen it happen in other cities before. So I would just simply say that's the business plan that we have. I think we would invest in it, and certainly nobody's going to finance it unless it's a sound business plan. We feel good about it.
And I appreciate that. It's all interesting and it's all wonderful, and none of it's the business of this school district. We are not hoteliers and we're not hotel investors. And this is, to me, this is very disturbing. And, the other thing that this, calls to mind is, all the literature that I read about this stuff, and I brought some for my comments before we vote, because I nerd on this stuff a little bit, but, all the literature out there is, except for the stuff that's written for developers, that says, hey, this is a good place to go to get financing. But the stuff that's done by the policy institutes is pretty clear that most of the time these projects would go on regardless of whether there's tax abatement or not, that this is just throwing money in investors' pockets. And, certainly, a couple of the other tax abatement packages that the city has done, this year, lead me to be skeptical. For example, the reliable ready mix tax abatement package, and I don't know what that was worth, but I just find it hard to believe that reliable ready mix, who owns that big patch of land, when it comes time to invest there, would pick up their operation and leave the city if it weren't for this tax abatement that's taking the money out of the Kansas City School District. Same thing with this RESNICK recycling. I mean, it's a decades-old company, had a fire, they own the land, and all of a sudden it's an emergency that they need tax abatement, or they're just going to pick up and leave. So I'm always skeptical when I hear people who are, really looking to interrupt our revenue stream come up with these, with these justifications. I mean, I realize that hotel has never made a dime. It was built in 1981, and the company Gibbons Grable, which is not around anymore, actually went bankrupt building it.
They went bankrupt because of the Solano building.
Okay.
The concrete package had nothing to do with New Market Road.
Okay, but nonetheless, when City Council talked about this, Mr. Smuckler talked about the numbers of bailouts that the city had given that hotel over the years. And I don't know how many that is. I don't keep track, but it just seems to me that if that is not a viable operation, then it's not a viable operation. Why are you expecting us, a school district that is not rolling in dough? Why are you expecting us to make a de facto investment in this property that has a business plan that's that weak?
Well, I do respect. I don't agree that the business plan is weak. We wouldn't make the investment otherwise. The reality, though, is I think you're probably saying the same thing. If you don't believe it's a business that's ever going to make money go out of business, you're going to lose all the revenue that's coming to the school district regardless. So, in my opinion, this is a chance for you to maintain and actually increase that revenue. And I'll tell you why I think it's different this time than the last time. And I'm not a I can't see it in the future. All I can tell you is based on my experience. If we can connect successfully what's going on in the village, even today, with the programming we have, we could have filled that hotel over in Triangle. We could have put high-paying revenue in there. We could have put youth programming in there pretty much all season long. And we can continue as we build programming in the stadium, meetings, conventions, other things, using this asset. I don't think you had that kind of partnership in the past. And so if it's under one ownership, we have the ability to go.
So why can't the Indiana City School District benefit from that increased use and that increased revenue through the normal channels of increased property tax?
Well, I guess the only answer is it won't, because we won't make the investment. We can't afford to make the investment. And so therefore, there won't be an asset to benefit from. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but the asset, the maintenance of the tax that's there today, the actual increase in the tax is our focus. The only other piece to the business plan that I can assure you of is the cost structure of that hotel will go down because we are aligning with the village. So we won't have multiple different GMs and multiple different people doing housekeeping. We'll have a shared services arrangement where the costs will be reduced, therefore adding to the bottom. So I fully understand and appreciate your point of view. The last thing I can say, though, is I really do believe that if we don't invest in this hotel, the hotel may not have a future to invest.
So who's ultimately going to make the money when you invest in this and it starts showing a profit? Who's going to get the profit?
Well, the owners and shareholders of the company.
How does this purchase impact this merger with a publicly traded company?
It doesn't impact it at all. It just becomes another asset that we would include in our profit and loss statements and how we file a proxy statement that lists all the revenue streams and the assets involved with those.
So a publicly traded company that sells stock out on the market actually could cover this $133,000 a year.
If the publicly traded company was up and running, making money, and selling stock potentially today, yeah, but I think we need to remember what I said to the media as well. The publicly traded merger is far from a done deal. We just announced an agreement in principle. So I always try to be transparent and temper expectations, because I don't want people looking at us, 2 months from now saying, we promised that was going to get done. We've made a promise. We've made an agreement in principle that we feel like will bring great benefit to the company and bring capital into the company, but we don't have anything.
So,
and one thing, if I may, I just want to stress one thing here. We have, over the last 3 months, had to put substantial money in the existing owner's pocket to have the opportunity to do the due diligence and consider buying the asset. We are on a very short fuse now. We have a limited amount of time to make this final decision. And without this form of economic support, our decision would be we won't make the investment. I can state that unequivocally. We have about 3 weeks to understand exactly the final financials, and then we have to make a decision to acquire it or not. It doesn't mean we would acquire it in 3 weeks, but we have to make a decision to go for it or not.
you said 2 weeks ago at the city council meeting, and you also alluded to it this evening, that you were going to be looking for, at some point, you didn't specify what it was, but you said you were going to be looking for additional municipal support at some point, and you're nodding your head yes now, so I heard you right both times. How will that impact this school district?
I don't believe it should affect the school district at all, because we haven't really discussed what that form is, but I'm hopeful that we are only coming to you with what we need to understand by today. There's not.
Was there any chance that you'll be coming back to us for more later?
That's certainly not the goal that we have at all.
But some things that Mr. Miller would like to speak.
Okay.
I just want to, so I am